Today is the 62nd anniversary of education. 62 years ago today, the federal government, the Supreme Court determined that separate but equal, basically, right? For lack of a better word. Case litigated by former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. Or yesterday, a Mississippi school district, Cleveland, Mississippi, was just ordered to desegregate. This is a 50-year battle. 62 years ago, Brown versus Board of Education. I'm saying we playing a long game because the desegregation battle is still being fought all across the country. There may not be an actual case law on it, but it's happening everywhere. Versus Board of Education. We're 62 years from separate is unequal. Ponder that for a moment. 57 years, I believe it is, from Martin Luther King's speech, give me the ballot, give us the ballot. Long game. We still talking about voting rights issues in 2016. This is the first presidential election that will not have the full protection of the VRA. It was enacted 51 years ago. This summer, first election that we will not have the full protection of VRA. And as we're seeing from our experiences in this primary season, there are so many other issues, these huge issues that have existed. So in addition to the problems we saw in Alabama, in addition with them closing down the DMVs, issues we saw in North Carolina with the ID requirements and students not having the right information for being able to vote. In addition to what we've seen in Wisconsin, right? That was a big issue in Wisconsin. This was the first election where that Wisconsin law was in place, and they didn't do any of the voter outreach education that the state was required to do. Problems going on. This is not new. Game. And this requires us to be active, engaged, informed consistently. And not just us, because it's great that we all aware and we woke and we know what's up. But if our attitude is, well, you should know this, and if you don't, that is on you, that is unacceptable. Unacceptable. That because you still lost, because you don't know this, or you don't understand why this is important, or you don't get why you should support Bernie, that's too bad on you. So we shouldn't be, why should we worry about voter engagement and outreach? Because if we're talking about building a movement, if we're talking about winning this battle and ultimately the war, people with us as we can get. Now, that don't mean that who is here now is not valuable, because you all know you are valuable, you are needed and forward. But at the same time, we can't lose out on the importance of organizing, educating, engaging our peers and our parents. You know, I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking like, you know, I can say, if nothing else, at least I delivered for the campaign, family member in my family. And I'll even go forward, my people I consider my brothers and sisters, even though we're not related, my extended family. I was able to at least do that. Whether people actually believe in voting, my enthusiasm, my persistence, talking to people about what they value, what they believed in, it spoke to them in a way that they had never thought about politics before. Who don't believe in the system, not all in Harlem, I'm gonna vote today because of you. That is a start. And now she's motivated and engaged to be more involved in her local stuff too. That means something. The person I was talking to is a friend from undergrad. We were talking and she was like, oh, you know, I tried, but my parents were this and I just didn't even try again. So how you gonna be mad about people not supporting and you couldn't even get care about you and that you actually have a rapport with? We got to get out there and talk to people face to face, because this is how we build a movement. This is how we move forward. So when we're talking about, and it's not just these issues that are happening now. Like I said, I get y'all are mad about Nevada, but there's a whole bunch of stuff to be mad about. Black and Latino students lose out to white peers, and it's getting worse. That's a headline out of Huffington Post Black Voices today. 6 decades after Brown versus Board of Education, a U.S. agency finds we still have a 2-tiered education system. I could have told you that. I did a project when I worked for BPI, Business and Professional People for the Public Interest in Chicago. That is a public interest policy center law firm. They were the original in Gautreaux v. CHA, Gautreaux v. Hood. Alexander Polikoff was my senior staff counsel. He litigated those cases before the Supreme Court in 1968. During that time, we were looking at, issues because we sat over the receivership of Chicago Housing Authority's, public housing. And one of the things we looked at were creating all this mixed income development housing. That's a whole nother story I'll talk about another time. We were looking at neighborhood schools and what makes a good school. And I was digging in deep in all this research and stuff. And we found in Chicago that even when you controlled so when you look at the similar situated like white and black levels, the schools were so different. They were so different. The opportunity was so different, vastly different. This is 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? As a kid, I could have told you that 15 years ago. The fancy, magnet school I got bused to was way different. Younger brothers went to. Big difference. So we are 62 years out from Brown versus Board of Education, and we still have issues. And we're seeing these issues in places that weren't traditionally covered by Brown versus Board of Education, or what people had in mind. Because when you talk about Brown versus Board of Education, they're thinking of like, the South, because the South is bad. New York City has some of the most, I think it's the most segregated school system in the country. New York is a rather diverse place, but there's a lot of education and housing segregation that exists. Now, we all say segregation is bad. We understand, we can use the language of intersectionality. We can talk out loud about segregation. We can use this language. We understand how to use it. We academically get what it all means, but can we as a movement, can we as a group, can we put it into practice to actually dismantling these institutions and the existing inequities that continue to persist in the system? Work that we need to be doing. That's some of the stuff that should be enraging us. Technically, the law no longer condones segregated schooling, but we still have a system that creates 2 tiers. There were so many efforts in the 60s and 70s, and some places even 80s. I have a friend from grad school. He was telling me a story about how they were busing them in Columbus in like 79, 80. There's 25 years after Brown versus Board of Education. If anyone's seen the movie Remember the Titans, right? Remember the Titans? That was the early 70s, and they were just then segregating schools in Virginia. There's a lot of work to be done, and across several different issues. We are up against centuries. I was going to say decades. We're up against centuries of institutionalized oppression across many different areas. Whether we're talking about race, gender, whether we talk about access to economic, mobility, voting rights, the way these parties have set up. And I know some of us are like, well, bump it, I'm leaving the party. You have a plan. Because you can leave the party and say, I'm not going to be involved with the party, but then what's the plan? What are we doing? Where are we going? Come on, let's be smart about this. Let's be smart about where we're going and what we're doing. What is the model? What is the plan? And how are we going to get there? I am not giving up on you. I may not always agree with you. I may not even like the way you present information to me, but I'm not giving up on you because I'm here. And I hope you don't give up on me if I say something you don't necessarily like. I promise you, I will respect you at the end of the day. because we're on the same side. But at the same time, just because we allies don't mean anything you do or say gets excused. We need to be held accountable and responsible. And I wouldn't be a good sister to you if I didn't say, yo, this is not cool. You wouldn't be a good brother or sister to me if you ain't say, yo, Anoa. But do so respectfully, because that's all I ask. And I know you would want the same for me. What can we do? Okay, schools are being reset. Schools have basically resegregated themselves. Well, and basically, post-racial America, it doesn't exist anymore. Whatever little progress did exist for that short period after the 60s, now we're refighting many of the same battles that were previously litigated. But now we're so far removed, people want to act like, oh, well, that was back then in those days. Now, we are still knee-deep in the legacy of racialized oppression and degradation in this country, of economic degradation, of religious oppression. I mean, so many different levels, right? But we got to figure out how to work together, how to parse it out, and how to move it along. So yeah, 62 years. 62 years post. That's crazy. That's crazy.